Let's roll. Let's roll. All right, we're rolling. Back at the Shop Class Podcast tonight. We're going to talk about the Wall Assembly Sweet 16 competition. Matt Bloomquist is going, a former judge, is going to lead us into the round table that we have here. Travis, I just muted you just while you were shuffling, but you can unmute yourself anytime. Okay. Matt, you want to take us around?
Yeah, I won't talk about the wall assembly contest. I'll let Travis and Connor do that heavy work. But I'll definitely introduce everybody here. So tonight on the show, we got Connor Malloy, who Connor's been on here a handful of times before, so we all know and love Connor. Travis Brungardt is actually new. Oh, go ahead.
Wait, Connor, just say hi so that the camera goes over to you.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Cameron. How you doing?
Love it.
That's the best thing I heard the whole day.
Right. And then Travis Brungardt, who is from Kansas City area on the Kansas side of the Missouri-Kansas line. Him and I have become good friends from a meetup in Columbia, Missouri, which Thomas was actually there. We'll have to get to you and Thomas here in a minute. Travis and Connor are the ones who are hosting this wall assembly, and Travis and his business partner Joe have started the BS and Beer Kansas City. This is how it all started. So Travis, say hi, make the camera see you.
Come to me, camera. Here I am in Prairie Village, Kansas. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again, Thomas.
And then, yes, so Thomas Nichols, he's just joining us just as to be in the gallery today. He was our guest last week because Thomas has the potential to be a new teacher here at Pittsville High School. But the reason Thomas also wanted to jump in was because back when they gave me the belt for the wall assembly, Thomas class was the ones that actually built the wall assembly we submitted on the first wall assembly competition they've ever did. Thomas also last year was part of the first student wall assembly competition they did and got to the final four, doing his own work and all that stuff and submitting his own application. So Thomas, say hi real quick just so everybody sees you.
How's everybody doing? Just came to pop in and check things out, see what you guys have changed.
And then, of course, the rest of the people they're sitting here. We got Nick. Nick, say hi. Nick's a regular. Present here. Duke Wazowski.
How's it going?
There's Duke. And then I see Bill Small on there, so that means Mark Willie's in the house. Or is he
no mic.
Listening? That's
Unmute
right.
yourself.
If anybody doesn't know Mark Willie, I don't even know where they're at. They don't know Mark Willie. Oh, there's Mark.
The thing's not even plugged in. I did that on purpose.
All right, Ron.
Cool.
Get Travis and Connor going so they can talk about the launch of the wall assembly and really talk about what's going on here so we can get students involved in this, and it's awesome.
Nice. All right, so last year we actually covered this on the Shop Class Podcast, which was pretty cool. And here it is. If someone's listening and they want to go back, check out the second annual. We're on the third annual now, and here was the intro to that, and it was pretty cool. There was a whole bunch of judges involved and teachers involved, and the rock stars of the business, and we also had student, getting in there and explaining their entries. You could see it publicly, which is kind of cool. It's like almost like crowd grading, but you have a judge behind it, and it's a Sweet 16, so it pairs down. But to tell us more about it, obviously, is Connor and Travis, and let's get into it. Usually, the first question I usually ask is, did you have shop class growing up? But I think this is more of a what is this competition? And for those who don't know, so who wants to take it, Travis or Connor?
Connor's done all the work, so I think it's only fair that he present.
All right.
I can start here, but I want to circle back to your first question, which is, I think it is important to think about when we all started in shop. And for me, it's public school. You know, my public school growing up had a shop space as big as a home ec room. That is now likely not there anymore, but we had table saws and routers and shapers, and we could make things. And that for me was, I was lucky enough to have a dad who's a builder and spent time on job sites, but to build things in an environment where you were taught proper tool safety and approach and self-discovery was really important. And then into my high school was pretty academic, but still had a small little shop program, and I weaseled my way in there every day, and that was a huge part of my growing up, you know. And then I went to design school, but I still found a design school that had a full woodworking shop, and that's just a great place to be. So, you know, we thought about this event. We thought about, as I now teach at a trade school in Toronto, George Brown College, we're the biggest skilled trade school in Canada. Most of my students coming to the program do not have a shop background. They do not have an on-site carpentry or even construction background. So luckily for us in skilled trades, we have so many new people coming into this industry just because it sounds exciting and they want to build with their hands or be applied. And this is a competition for them to help champion and support their ideas. When you go to architecture school, design school, there are global competitions, local competitions. You can go to New York, Chicago. There's great prize money. You can put these on your website or in your portfolio. So for trade school students and architectural students who don't like sexy things, but kind of nerdy, boring assemblies, this is a place for them to really have their ideas supported and, you know, be discussed by like-minded folk, and just get a good discussion going. So that's my perspective and how we kind of took it from professional and pushed it to students, which is why we're here today.
So let me comment that I'm glad we actually went back. I'm glad you talked about that, and I love the opportunity you're giving everybody to be involved in a competition like this, which gets everybody excited. As you know, everybody, I always talk about is my class. I've converted to all small competitions, and so the engagement level is way up because it's just in the DNA. Even if the kid doesn't want to, let's say their motivation is not to be in a shop class, but a competition just brings out everybody, so that's one piece of the puzzle. The other thing is that's interesting that you said is that even in Canada, you're experiencing the same problem, is that people who come to your class from at the college level most likely didn't have shop class growing up. And this is part of the reason that we're doing the shop class podcast, because of the shop classes that survived or somehow grew during the 90s clear out. We need to connect the dots and explain why is this important and why are we doing it. And the old thing is that people say, oh well, if you're not going to college, you got to go to a trade. They always like, oh well, at least they can, it's for the dumb people or something like that, which is total nonsense. Edison, worked with his hands. All these people work with their hands. So something I used to say, well, my response was always, hey, you can't read how to ride a bicycle. So this was like that's my jab, right? But I came up with a new one lately that I think might help serve this competition and intro into talking about it. And then I'll pass it over to you guys again. It's a three-dimensional language. In other words, it's unprocessed three-dimensional language. So when you can look at a house and not know what you're looking at. But when someone looks at a book and you see words, if you don't know, then you're illiterate. So this is a problem, right? But you look at a house or a car and you don't know what you're looking at, that's okay. And that's interesting. You don't have to know everything, but there's a three-dimensional language that's unprocessed. Like no one's going to tell you how thick the steel is or how much insulation a house has or what a thermal break is. Nobody's going to tell you this stuff. But if you have a shop class, you might gain a pathway into at least the three-dimensional language, and it's unprocessed. So it's like you have to figure it out yourself. It's not given to you. So I really appreciate you guys running the competition, and that's just my 2 cents on why the shop classes are so important, because it's a language, What do you think there, Travis? Did you have shop class? Did you have shop class growing up?
I did. I had shop class in 7th and 8th grade. I did not choose to take shop in high school. I missed out on all the wonderful teachers, the CAD programs that I would really have benefited from taking, the higher level stuff. I still have my cassette tape holder that I made out of sheet metal with some woodblock ends that I did some pin punch work on to decorate. I'm sure that's laying around somewhere from 7th grade woods and metals. But I did in high school build. I was in theater. I did a lot of stuff with the theater kids. That's where the cool kids were in my school. The band and the theater ran the school. So really weird. We were terrible at athletics, which is it's quick for me because I'm also terrible at athletics. So really couldn't have gone to a better school. But we had excellent arts, and the theater program there was one of the best in the country at the time. And I did not get the part that I wanted. So I signed up for construction crew and I built the set. And that's when I first really started using tools a lot. But I come from a farming family, like, you know, the previous generation. My dad's a cop. My mom was an insurance underwriter, but my grandfathers were both farmers. So you guys know how it is on the farm. You are the mechanic and you are the wood shop and you are the plumber, and whatever needs to be done is what your job is that day. And so I saw handwork growing up. I saw that had value. I had a lot of respect for it. And I valued that work ethic that my family instilled in me. And I still think it's the greatest gift that I was given. So in high school, I had the opportunity to be exposed to different avenues to artistic expression. And I really couldn't have had a better path, because the ceramics teacher was, you know, nationwide recognition. The photography teacher, I named my daughter after my photography teacher. I mean, there's a lot of close. Yeah, Sally, my daughter Sally, she's beautiful and wonderful in so many ways. And my wife and I really spent a lot of time together in photography class, and the stuff that we did in high school together. We met in high school. She wouldn't date me then, but that's a longer, uninteresting story that no one cares about. I will tell you that the education at that level is so important. And I believe so strongly in the work that is being done. And I think even back to elementary school, the support that you give kids who don't necessarily want to just sit and read or program or do robotics or play football. All of those things are things that I did not fit into. And I had the creative outlet and then the support of teachers like yourselves who said, no, you can do something else that's cool. Here's how this drill works. Here's how the saw works. Put your fingers in the saw. Let's go ahead and make a frame. We'll stretch muslin over it. We'll paint it to look like a mountain scene. And now it's Camelot. And all the cute girls did theater, man. So I was happy to be in theater. And I was a total spaz. So it gave me that creative outlet. I also had an uncle who ran a hardware store. So in the summers, I got to work at my uncle's hardware store, and I use work in quotes because I was useless. But he had an MG in the back that he was rebuilding. So that's like all springs. And, you know, he was a TV repairman, and it was a Radio Shack in a hardware store because it was a super small town. So I had a really blessed background to have access to all these people who respected hard work, understood the importance and the value of having access to put your hands on things and how rewarding that is. And so I really feel fortunate to have had that experience. And I'm really grateful for you guys for all the work that you do, and all the teachers that I was blessed to have.
That's awesome. Wow. First of all, thank you for saying that. It's amazing to me. You know, we've done this thing, you know, once a week forever now. And it's incredible meeting people like yourself that, you know, appreciate the shop and grew out of that, and you can articulate it really well. And yeah, so I guess it's not quite true that, you know, oh well, you're not gonna do anything, so you got to learn how to work your hands. You know, this is like a crazy thing that people say.
It's elite status, bro. Elite status if you can work with your hands. Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's awesome. Love to hear about all the theater stuff. That's great. You know. Now, where exactly was that? Is it up in Canada as well?
No, I'm down in the Midwest, the mighty Midwest. I'm in
Oh,
Kansas.
nice. Oh, okay,
so I'm
right,
right in the
all right.
middle of the map. Yeah, we're right on the Missouri line. So Kansas City straddles Kansas and Missouri, those two states. And I'm in a little suburb 15 minutes from downtown KC.
Nice.
When we have a construction company here, we do custom built homes, and that's how I ended up meeting with Matt Bluquist. And then how I met with Connor was through Matt when we planned the first Sweet 16. I think he tagged him way back then. But for the second one, and I don't want to take over here, but I will say I'm not going to be able to contribute much to how the contest works.
What's
okay.
That?
I said I'm not going to be able to contribute as much as to how the contest works because Connor has completely built everything and has done all of the yeoman's work there. But I will say that the first contest was born out of COVID. I'm a basketball fan. That was my first love. Before my wife, I loved basketball. And when COVID killed March Madness, I was like, what would be fun is to have a wall assembly Sweet 16. And so our local BS and beer group, I was like, this will be a fun thing we can do because we can't get together. So we'll do this through Instagram. And the first one was kind of a popularity contest, which you guys probably knew since Matt won it. He's got the belt. So, it's all about who you know, right? But in that first contest, I think Matt definitely started tagging Connor. And I didn't really think too much about it when the second contest came around. When it was time for the second year, I was not really planning to do it. It was kind of a lot of work because we ran it all through like Instagram voting. And I was, counting votes till 11 and 12 at night and then recounting them in the morning to make sure I got the last ones and then having to coordinate everyone. It was a ton of work.
Just through the DMs?
Yes.
Whoa.
In comments. Yeah. So, and it wasn't quite as big as it is now. Like I said, it's training wheels. This is the first year. So, it was still counting a couple hundred votes times 16 different, whatever. The point is that Connor reached out to me, I believe, a couple months into last year and was like, hey, are you going to do the Sweet 16 competition? I was like, no, man, that was a ton of work. I'm not doing that again. It was fun, but no. And he's like, oh, really? That's really disappointing. Like, the teaching community can really benefit from that as part of their curriculum. And then the kids, I mean, what a great opportunity. You guys really, I mean, it was neat that the pros were involved, but to have the kids have the opportunity to, compete and, we could make it something that's much bigger, like national, international. Like you could have people from all over submitting ideas. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm really passionate about trades education and I really try to work hard with that locally, but I don't know if I want to get involved with all that. And he goes, and I will never forget this, and he probably never will either. He probably still regrets it. He goes, how about this? I'll do all the work, and if you promote it and show up for the judging, that's all I need. It's like, well, I can't turn that down.
Yeah, how are you going to say no to that?
Yeah, man, if someone else will do your homework, you got to say yes.
I mean, what? Yeah, that's exactly how it went. What I learned last year was I listened to an NPR episode, and this journalist that talked about reaching out to colleagues and telling them almost as praise. They make each year a list of things they're jealous of, articles they wish they'd written, nothing as a builder, projects you wish you built, clients who wish you had. And I thought about, okay, from the teaching space, who is doing something in a non-competitive way that I'm just jealous of, that we weren't involved with or couldn't help with. That's kind of where it started was, Travis, this thing you did with Joe and your team is amazing. Are you doing it again? And if you want to, can we sway it towards students, which would really benefit by this whole discussion? And I think and as we see, the pickup this year with even more interest, everyone wants to support students, sponsors want to, judges want to, we as a community want to. That's why we're here today. And we'll see the need for it. And, the two of us have never met in person. That hopefully will happen someday soon. It's kind of a screen bromance and one through texts and late night phone calls. But it makes a competition like this possible. So it's quite wonderful.
It's so funny what COVID did. The Instagram was like really a great connector pre-COVID. A lot, about maybe 3-4 years before COVID or something. But it was starting to grow, and the podcasts were happening. I mean, I think Joe Rogan was just getting started and stuff like that and whatnot. And then similar thing happened. We just, we started connecting, and the collaborations just are popping off. So I'm really glad to hear that this is happening. And that's a cool story that you guys, one person started it and kind of handed it off, and maybe a collaboration. That's great. That's awesome. And that's the whole thing, is that, we're, we got a funny comment from Mark. He said, Connor's doing an adequate job. It's okay. Obviously, Connor takes what he does. He's like the guy who dots all the I's and crosses the T's. He does a good job. Yeah.
When you're grading people's futures, you got to be.
Yeah, really. From my perspective, I really enjoy seeing the wall, or the walls, the entries, because I get to see what the walls are made of and how it's all assembled. Because, for me, I'm coming from car guy. I get into a little bit of electronics, but I'm still trying to figure out, how these houses work and how they go together and whatnot, and where you're going to put my favorite thermal break. Where are you going to put the thermal break? And I have a bigger favorite. I love the red door of truth. And will this pass? We're gonna get into all that stuff. So from my perspective, it's an education to watch you guys run this competition, because I get to read about who, the finalists. I'm like, why is that person a finalist? And I read about it. I could read the judges' notes and stuff like that. It's very interesting from an outside perspective. And also in our district, K-Wit is, Kevin Witt. He is building like a small house inside. And let me just pull it up for a second. And so I'm sure a lot of shop teachers could build a little house, but you don't have to be in this contest. Am I right about that? So here's like a little house that they're building inside, because not everybody has a chance to build like a full-size house. But you don't have to do that. It's a wall assembly as far as the your ideas of how to assemble your wall. And actually, this is like a wall detail right here. And he does 4 different types of walls when he assembled it with the students. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys doing this contest. Connor, you want to tell us where you are, or maybe do you want to tell us where it came from last year? How do you want to kick this off and really explain the contest to people?
Well, yeah, we can jump in from last year, kind of talk about what it is. So I guess for us, for me at least, I think together as the team who does the event, is collaborative. We're here to sponsor discussion around build assemblies and show that this competition is not just for skilled trade students, builders, or carpenters. It is very much about anyone who works around homes and commercial buildings and assemblies. And in an assembly, we need to start to learn, we teach this, who the different stakeholders are that a student or professional might interact with. So Travis in a job works with Mike, someone does energy modeling. Someone does the engineering of maybe certain point loads and structures. Then he has potentially a residential designer design the envelope. Someone helps with performance modeling. And then you talk to your window spec, and then you talk to your material suppliers and get input. And all that means you're managing all that information. And so students in this competition is like, how do we open this to students of architecture, students of any design really, who are learning how to construct assemblies, and then the people who are learning how to build these things so they can come together. And so this can be a vehicle for building students to be heard, architectural students to be heard, and design students to be heard on an even playing ground. So we can start to support when they graduate, when they meet an architect, you both advocate for different parts of the building. You have different skill sets and specialties. So it's kind of a mutual respect is how we kind of approach why we allow any student from high school, college, or university. If you notice, the winners the last 2 years were high school students, not from my program, not from universities, not from postgrads. So it doesn't matter really who you are or where you come from. It is about the idea. So that for me is really quite attractive. Travis, anything you want to add there?
I would just to piggyback on that, I do obviously agree 100%, but I would add that to encapsulate what makes it so much more valuable than even the winner or even the competitors is the sharing of the information. Because I think that when you look at the judges' comments from last year, obviously, anytime you have the opportunity to pick the brains of, Mike Girt and Steve Basic, just right on down the line, Emily Mottram, Christine Williamson, all these people that contributed feedback, it wasn't just an opportunity for those students in the program to learn. It was an opportunity for professionals like me and every other student and every other just building science enthusiast to look at, oh, I see what they're saying there. This is why this one did well, or this is why this one got nicked on that little bit of score there, because Mike Girton said, yeah, this isn't going to be durable, or this is going to be, a high performer. So those comments to me have a really broad ripple throughout the industry, as well as in the future for these students that are coming up. So I think that's incredibly important, and equally so, at least.
100%. I mean, the people that we've been able to get to come and judge the entries, these are like, their comments are mini GLC and mini fine humbling articles in their level of detail and thought. It's incredible. It's the stuff that I would love to have comments on my work on a daily basis. That's how we kind of approach this is, we stole this from how we run some of our design studios. It's how do we make the competition work virtually, not in person, in a way that's transparent and it can live as a support for people who want to read it later. So we built it as a giant, kind of like a brainstorming board. All the submissions are dragged in as PDFs. The judges can then see all the PDFs at full scale. You can zoom in and look at the plans, look at the designers or the creator's intent, the thought behind how buildable it is, the cost of it is, and then they were able to vote just by dragging a picture of their face to what they thought their score would be, and then they could write comments. And that meant that each student could go back to, and this is what I like about design competitions, is when you present in front of judges, you'd hear their commentary. So this is a way that they could write those, while they're at home or in Texas where Christine is, one of our judges, or the West Coast, and leave those comments. Students could read it, and then future entrants, like now, 2022, you can go back and see the full competition, learn from what was presented before, read the comments, and come up with your own ideas.
So can you give us a functionality tour of how this works? And then I would like to get into maybe some highlighted comments you'd like to, so like, for instance, like, let's say I wanted to see the comments on this one. Here's Matt. Do I click on Matt or do I click on this?
So it's pretty simple. So if you zoom out and you just go to the far left of the board, so this is a program called Miro. It's MIRO. So imagine this comes from design schools in crits and pinups. Imagine you take your project, you stick it to the wall, you pin it to the wall. Your teacher comes by, gives you comments, or redlines it, as Steve would do, or takes a sticky note and sticks it on the face of it. This is what this thing is doing. So these are the judges here. Anytime they made a comment, those color stickies are the sticky colors that they used. So if you look at the first row, this is the winning submission here, the retrofit from New York. We basically made a graphic of the voting grid. Judges could read
this one
the
right
submission.
here.
And if you want to zoom into one of those stickies, zoom into one of the pink ones.
Okay,
right
I
in the middle.
see a sticky now. Okay. Here we
Yeah.
go.
So zoom into the green ones. I think these are potentially Mike Girton here. No, so it's Emily Mottram in green. So each judge had their own color. So you as a participant or you as a future entrant could read and see which comments give you which judges give you which commentary.
Okay.
And
Cool.
the comments are, they're insightful and thoughtful and detailed. The amount of time judges spent is just quite incredible. But looking at each factor. So to have that level of review is quite exciting. So this was all done at the first submission. So judges, so in this case, Emily said, you mentioned in the embodied carbon that the most of these things can be found assembled on site without a crane. But how much site prep area do you have in a area like this that is in this town? I saw a presentation on how they're doing this in Europe, and it appears that they can put the facade on as one piece, which helps with the amount of site work that needs to happen on these tight building lots. So each comment is very specific to that student's work, and like there's thousands of words written here.
All right.
So judges would go through, they would read the submissions, give comments, and then go back and score it against the 6 criteria.
I look at that as a giant leap forward for anyone who has access to this platform. Like you just leapfrogged me, who's been working as a professional in this industry for 20 years. So having that access to that sort of peer review is not something that would be typical, even though all you guys are great shop teachers. You can't crowdsource Steve Basic, Christine Williamson, Jake Bruden, Mike Gurton, and all these people at the drop of a hat the way this access does. So you really do get what I would consider sort of the cream of the crop intel to leapfrog into, oh, I have a much more holistic understanding of the assembly and the criteria which will dictate its durability and long-term success.
You know, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like the amount, like in other industries, I mean, even in our industry, this happens too. But to go and get this kind of feedback or this kind of access to these people, like I know I was a judge last year, but I definitely felt like the freshman on the varsity squad, right? I mean, I was learning so much from these guys, as much as I was trying to also critique and grade as well. But like this is like PhD level courses. This is expensive. Like in a normal industry, to get this kind of professional, usually you're paying out the wazoo to get to go listen and get this kind of feedback and direct consulting services, let's say, from these kind of people. Like this is anybody watching this and trying to get your kids, or if you're thinking about jumping in on this competition, definitely do it, because you couldn't probably afford to do it any other way. These guys are awesome.
That's
Yeah,
great.
even if you don't win, which is, so if there's for one first prize winner, 16 other applicants, the real winning here, if you look at it, is really the feedback. To get these people to comment, the billing rates of some of these professionals as consultants it's as much as my mortgage payment. So to get that feedback is really incredible, and it is exceptionally thoughtful.
Wow. I've been winner shop class for dinner. That's a good one, Mark. I've been trying to advocate for this type of feedback for a long time. I didn't imagine it to be like this. But I use the word crowd grading, which I guess is 2 words. But I really do think that people need to get out of the classroom, even if it's virtually. So, for instance, I call it the audience of one. I don't think it's quite fair for a teacher to just judge their classroom on every single project. They should be like the coach. And like, imagine if you had a way to have professionals chime in, other shop teachers, professionals in the trade, architects, engineers, and they all get to comment on it. I understand that's a lot of labor. However, if you're getting crowd feedback, you're serving that student and that potentially career much better than if it's just one local yokel, just like the local guy, he's the guy, this is the shop teacher, I would like to think I'm a good shop teacher, but I definitely would rather have my students judged by, the crowd. I want to be their coach. I don't want to be their judge. So this is a great system. I might try this system with an upcoming contest. This is awesome.
It's really wonderful. So we use this for really large classes where you're critiquing or giving feedback on visual projects, because you can have an entire class. So I teach part-time at another university, and our class size is 110 students. We have 2 hours. There's 3 of us working with these students. So I have 33 students that I meet with in 2 hours. We have to go through each of their drawings and give feedback. In a physical setting, you're moving every minute and a half to get to each of those students. In this case, there's basically a column. Imagine each week is a column. Every student drags in their progress work. You can go down the list, look at each one. Everyone
here's
can
the
listen,
column.
listen to the feedback. Yeah, listen. So imagine that row is however many rows long as you have students. And each column is a week of your class. So they drag in their progress work. You grab a sticky note. They can ask questions. They can critique each other, which I really like. So at some point mid-semester, they're pretty good at giving feedback to each other. So have them critique each other and then just go and approve whether the comment is offside or onside. Add your commentary to it. You really kind of start to practice that critical thinking. So this is a great tool for really critiquing any kind of medium. And if you separate grading, which you understand the rubrics, the learning outcomes, the course outcomes, from the feedback, have someone come in to just give a critique based on their industry perspective. They don't have to mark it. They can come in and just free form their own thoughts, have them join the board. Students can share their ideas, and it could be wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you just like now, maybe could you give us some highlighted ones, or can we pick out a few that we could talk about as examples? This is not bad over here, right?
Yeah, I mean, zoom in on one of the pink ones just for an inch. Just go down here.
Here.
So this is Christine Williamson. Go to the right-hand side here. Go to the giant 3,000 word response here.
Here.
That right there.
Okay.
So Christine Williamson is a building science professional, trained as an architect, resides in the U.S. But the comments here, just look at this. So from Christine, it's good to see some dissenting opinions here. I love this wall, and I would absolutely keep the primary water and air control on the exterior face of the brick, as currently shown. You'll flash windows to this layer, and all penetrations through this layer will be sealed. But because you've chosen wood fiber insulation, which is Gutex, that's the spec they chose, I'd like to see a second water control membrane outboard of the Gutex. You could use any mechanically fast attached membrane, felt paper, or a plastic building wrap. This is inexpensive and protects the insulation from becoming saturated. This would not be an issue had you chosen something less moisture sensitive like mineral wool, like for rock wool, or XPS, which is a foam-based insulation. The choice of wood fiber insulation was probably made to minimize carbon. I do not view the carbon savings from one material to another as significant enough to influence my design decisions, but other people do. If you're going to use something more moisture sensitive, then you'll want to take the added step of protecting it. Note, the manufacturer of this material surely disagrees with me and believes this material to be water resilient, as they do, enough for this application. I would not stake my professional reputation on that and would add the second layer of protection if this were my project. Also, keep in mind the water loads of multifamily buildings are much higher than single-story homes, where this product, Gutex, is more typically used.
Wow.
That's one of Christine's comments. That's one of 5 on this person's project.
Yeah.
The level of detail and insight and experience is just exceptional.
You know, I kind of like to bring it down to the ground sometimes. Think about this. You got architects and, professional builders arguing and fighting over the types of insulation and layers. Meanwhile, most of us, including myself, I'm newbie to this. I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's like, wow, these people, just like I am sure at BMW, they are fighting over every ounce, and every, and at Tesla, they're fighting over every electron. And just like this is a group of people you definitely want to get in with, because you want to understand what I don't want to, fighting is a bad, way of saying it, but I think you get my layman's way of looking at it is they care. Like, they care enough to write this whole thing saying, look, I know what you're trying to do here. This is cool, but look, you might want to try this. That's amazing. I mean, and they're worried about the houses of the future, and they're worried about educating the youth coming up. It's amazing,
And I think what you see too is if you look at if you actually took all the comments and dragged them over by color to the person who wrote them, you start to see a theme. And this comes back to my initial comment about we as building professionals advocate for a different part of the project. So an architect can advocate for the spatial programming, maybe the building layout, maybe the envelopes. The builder can advocate for buildability, maybe a cost of the systems based on their labor or their in-house training. So if you drag these over, I bet you'll see some commonalities from more of the builders on buildability or cost or site logistics. Some of the building science professionals on water management, WRB, even thermal breaks. And then the architects around maybe some of the assembly and the structure or just the cost prohibitiveness. So you see these filters. I think it's really passive when you look at it, but when you start to see the pattern, you see how we all champion different parts of that assembly. And that's going to here for students to learn from in the future, which is, I think, quite exciting.
Yeah, that's a very. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Travis, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's the beauty of the judging panel is it was incredibly balanced. You do have a who's who of building science know-it-alls up there, but you also have multi-generational building perspectives from Ben Bogey and Jake Bruton and Mike Girton, who's still out in the field every day. But then you also have 3 architects up there, and then you have a high school shop class teacher who has the perspective of, oh, this is the way that these kids think. I understand what their intent was in a way that these other people, they're not educators. Well, I guess they are all educators in their own right, but not in the way that Matt is. So every different perspective that adds those layers, that's exactly what Connor's talking about with his peer review in classes. You're getting such an amalgam of brilliance that it is like the engineer's table at the BMW factory, except that it's also the textile design team sitting there with them. And it's also the marketing team sitting there with them. And it's also the race team sitting there with them. You're getting all of the top minds, all the perspectives, and they're all being incredibly thoughtful about it. So every time you see like a purple sticky on there or a bright orange one, you're probably going to get something that lends itself to, hey, I don't know how you're going to get this to your site. Or there's no way that you're going to be able to get someone to perform that in the field in a reasonable amount of time. I hope your labor number reflects that. You might want to reconsider. This might be a better fit for panelized or off-site because of the challenges of this. Because that's what you're going to get from Jake and Ben because they're in the field. They've been bags on it. They understand. You might not get that same feedback from Emily, but Emily might tell you, this would work really well if you detailed it this way because that material has these properties. So you're really, that's the brilliance of the competition. And obviously it wasn't, I wish I could say it was always designed that way. And this is the future vision that I cast way back when. Obviously that's not the case. We started with, this will be fun. And I like to think about this stuff. All these guys do too. Let's all talk about it. But now what you're getting with Chris Magwood in there and Enrico Bolinari, Bonolari, you're getting the highest level of thermal analysis on how these walls would actually perform and the highest level of carbon analysis and really understanding cradle to cradle means with regard to building materials. So we have never looked at our industry with such a enormous magnifying glass in the way that this stuff was considered, in my view.
What's interesting is that you hear this type of analysis and this type of passion in like a sports show. Like, hey, Mike and the Mad Dog. I don't know if you guys have that out by you. Mike and the Mad Dog, and they're talking about the Mets or the Yankees or whatever. And it's like, and I stopped caring about that a while ago. It's cool, but I played baseball growing up and whatnot. But I listen to stock analysis where they're fighting over it and they're talking about, hey, these are the fundamentals over here and these are the but we're adults and I don't know if the kids know that this is available, and it's great that you're doing this contest because, high school or college, and it's also open to pros. Is that right? Or is it just high school and college? Just high school and college. Okay.
Education only.
Okay. And so imagine these kids who love arguing about sports. Oh my God. Like how many times do they argue about sports in class? It's like an endless conversation. they could argue over this, which is really interesting. Like, hey, you got a thermal break over here, but you got some connected, a bridge over there. What about your moisture barrier? Oh, and okay, you're going to do that, but how are you going to get the crane in the site? And where are you? Is it urban? Okay, so you probably only want to visit once with the crane. And how are you going to get the concrete truck through traffic? Like, it's amazing to me. I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. Very cool. Now, can we? I like that, Connor. You were kind of painting a story that there's sort of these profiles. Would you mind giving us, like, someone like me who, even though I've been talking with some of these people, through the Shop Class podcast, I don't quite know what everybody's specialty. Maybe we could go over it a little bit. You want to go through that for us?
Well, maybe Travis could. Travis really works with a lot of these esteemed professionals, so maybe you can speak to that, Travis.
It would be my pleasure. Yeah, these are people that I've been looking up to for a long time. And I'm not just talking about the pros in the industry on the design and build side. I am talking about Matt Bloomquist. When I met him in Columbia, I immediately had great admiration for him. So you guys know Matt. I won't have to talk about him too much because you're pretty familiar on this show. Matt is somebody who has a heart for the industry, teaching in prison and then, deciding to take the easy way out and teaching kids in school. That's a joke because Matt always says how much harder it was to teach kids than it is to teach prisoners. But you guys know Matt. The rest of the who's who, the murderer's row there, Christine Williamson is a Canadian-born building scientist and, as Connor said, she was trained as an architect. I don't think she's practicing as an architect, but she's a building science consultant operating out of Texas. And I first ran across her on Instagram. She runs Building Science Fight Club is her Instagram handle. And she's been presenting educational content for architects and people who are enthusiastic about better assemblies for many years. She's designed some courses on her website. You can, as an architect, you can kind of self-educate with the things that she's been providing to us for free on Instagram for a very long time. And the coursework's extremely detailed. So many of her posts look like entries into this competition where she's basically explaining in detail. And, this is how you can improve from this point. These are the layers that you need to consider. If you're going to change this one thing, the house is a system. You have to change these things as well. So Christine is fantastic. I first saw her speak at the Fine Home Building Summit in 2019. And it was a very easy thing to ask her, would you please help us with this? And we asked her she hosted the first year, the award show. So Matt and Christine are 3 years returning with the competition. Next up, I will mention Mike Girton.
Wait, take a thermal break. Hold on 1 second. You got to understand, my head is going to explode. I think this is the funniest thing that we were just talking about, how people are doing these, sports shows and they're fighting over the smallest detail. Like, oh, I think this guy, he's a lefty. They got to bring him in. Da, da, da. And here it is, Building Science Fight Club. Are you kidding me?
That's right.
I'm blown away. We're on to something here. I'm like when they do these podcasts, it's like I'm just like a miner. When I find a vein, let's just do this, man. That's amazing.
And
she's fantastic.
And I'll just add Christine's content. I first learned about her through a friend. I was at a building convention and said, you've got to look at this woman's feed. She breaks into people's job sites and then critiques their details. I'm like, what? And her first videos a couple of years ago were going into someone's job site while out on a run, grabs her phone and starts pointing at the foundation waterproofing layer, how it terminates at the top of the foundation wall, how the debris comes down and how the tape is dirty and doesn't adhere. And I'm like, it's amazing, right? It's we talk about sharing, and this really kind of epitomizes what that looks like. She's not critiquing, she's giving feedback in a way that's accessible and shares, and it's really quite wonderful.
She's like you guys. She's a teacher. She really is, and she shares generously, and doesn't shy from criticism either, which makes you respect her all the more. Sidebar: her dad is Dr. Joe Steebrook, who is sort of the godfather of building science in many people's eyes. So she really grew up around this. So as we talk about, mentorship as a responsibility, my goodness, what's it like to grow up in the dinner table discussion with Dr. Joe? You're not winning any arguments there. You better be on point. And she is.
And sidebar, funny enough, my wife went to a girls-only high school in Toronto.
And another fun fact.
Very small class.
Oh, are you going to say it, Connor?
Yeah. So Christine went to high school with my wife. Well, she was in Toronto for a few years before they moved back to the U.S. And she's like, "Oh, you know Martha?" I'm like, "That's my wife." She's like, "Oh, I know Martha." I'm like, "Wait, hun, you know Christine Williamson? Do you know she's like the Kobe Bryant of the building industry?" You know, it's like, she's like, "Oh yeah, I think she was quite smart." I'm like, "Yeah, she's really smart." It's amazing. So cool.
Pretty next level. And it's across the board that way with the rest of these judges. Like Mike Gurton, I always describe him as a national treasure and a building monk. If you want to learn how to do something the right way.
Don't go so fast. Hold, let me get back to this. I'm enjoying this.
Indulge. She's fantastic.
I want to go deep on each person. I want to know what's going on.
Okay.
It's easy. Hold on.
Here's a funny story that you'll like. If you want to hear one more about Christine. So there's this product that we use in our industry all the time, made by Hubert Corporation. It's a zip system sheathing. It's the green-faced OSB that you see on a lot of new homes because it's an air and water barrier in one. So when that product came out, I was still using Tyvek, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. That green coating can't be the water and air management layer because I'm going to shoot nails through it. I'm going to put nails into the OSB, and it's going to immediately leak. Zip system sheathing. Zip System, ZIPSYSTEM. And if you look up that product, you'll see that it's basically just looks like a green painted piece of plywood. But it's an OSB that has really high level polymers, more so than like a commodity OSB, which will delaminate after even 1 or 2 wettings. This product's far more durable. But when it first came on the market, I didn't know that. I was just looking at it as, well, this is a really expensive OSB. And I would never consider using that as my WRB, water resistive barrier, or weather resistive barrier is what it says in the code, because I'm going to shoot it full of holes. I'm going to put nails into it to hold it to the studs, and I'm going to put more nails in it when I nail the siding on. And so kind of an idiot pretends that this magic green paint is going to keep water out of the house. And this is an argument that was heard by a lot of people, particularly in regard to overdriven fasteners. Because if you guys have ever, driven a nail into OSB with a nail gun, you better have your pressure set right, because the driver will push that nail all the way through OSB. It's just not as hard as some other materials, like a regular plywood gives more resistance, whereas OSB typically does not. So if you don't have your gun depth set right, you're overdriving the fastener. You might push the head of that nail halfway through the sheet. So I was very reluctant to adopt this system. Of course, now it's the only thing we use in our houses, but 15 years ago, I was like, this is crazy. I would never consider it. Even 7 or 8 years ago, I think there were still people entertaining these discussions about if you nail the zip onto the house, you have to cover every single nail head with goop or tape, because they make a proprietary, you saw the tape on the proprietary tape to air and water seal the joints. I was like, that's stupid. I'd have to cut all these little dots and put nail covers on every single one. So of course, that's me. That's the guy in the field who's just thinking, I know how to use Tyvek. This stuff's new. Why would I do this? So Christine, who, is an educator and spends her time lecturing and helping people to better understand these assemblies, she famously says, don't worry about that. That overdriven fastener is not a hole. And actually, Steve Basic, who's also on the judging panel, he's been saying this for a very, very long time. It is not a hole if there's something in it. Uh-huh. And for water to leak into something, you have to have a hole, a pressure difference, and I think it was maybe Dr. Joe who said, and you have to have something that will be ruined or damaged by the wetting in order for the leak to be a concern. So I may be misquoting people all over the place, but I learned a ton of what I know from Steve. And I always remember Christine dealing with this so much in public speaking forums, the fear of the overdriven fastener. If you type in overdrivenfastener.com, it will take you to Christine's website that she took money out of her own pocket to start to explain why you don't need to worry about that. And please stop asking that question because you're holding back our industry. You have to understand how these systems work in order to properly design and install them. And overdrivenfastener.com is still up, and it probably saves Christine, I don't know, 25 to 30 hours a year of people asking her that question that she's answered 100 or 1,000 times. And it's saving all of the other colleagues of hers who are fighting similar battles. Overdrivenfastener.com. If you want to laugh, that's my last story on Christine.
I'm going there. This is amazing. It's amazing to me that how much information was just gathered just by asking questions about the judges. So you're not kidding. This is an all-star situation. The Overdriven Fastener.
Yep, overdrivenfastener.com. It's her website. And if you just read the first paragraph, you're going to love it.
The Overdriven Fastener. Here's a helpful sentence. For water infiltration to be problematic, the wetting of a wall assembly experiences must exceed its capacity to store and redistribute water for long enough to damage the material that compose it. Okay, let's break that down. Oh yeah, there we go.
That's just restating what I attributed to Steve or Dr. Joe. If you don't have something in that cavity that's getting wet and is harmed, then you don't actually have a problem. So in an old house, not to go all BS with you, but in old houses we didn't insulate. We had open wall cavities, and the way that you heated and cooled your house usually involved a fireplace or an open window. Well, that's a lot of air moving. You've got convection going on, and therefore you have drying in those cavities. So if your window leaks into a wall with no insulation and you have a plaster interior wall finish with no wallpaper on it, you probably can let that window leak for a really, really long time, because when you light the fire to warm yourself up in the evening, you dry out that wall cavity. Or if it's super cold outside, that moisture is going to dry to the exterior, and you don't experience wood rot, you don't have failure. You do have wetting, but you don't have damage. So that's what she's getting at. If you don't have those conditions of water got in and it made something wet and it can't handle being wet, that's that store and redistribute. It can't handle being wet and it can't dry out. Now you have a problem. Okay. And yeah, super deep dive on BS. Sorry.
No. I'm this way about, no, don't apologize at all. This is all, I'm loving this, by the way. Travis, don't apologize. This is full bore, man. This is it. I'm like this about electric cars. I love this stuff. And I'm a gasoline guy. I love pistons too. But, people are like, oh yeah, electric cars, that I like the sound of the gas engine. And I'm like, right. So when you hear it, you're wasting energy. Sound is energy. So you're like, yeah, that's cool. But typewriters make noise and they're obsolete. So it's like, yeah, but they're nostalgic. 100%. I'm nostalgic. I have an old motorcycle sitting over there. I'm never going to get rid of my piston engines. But if you're driving around and you want to get somewhere really fast and efficient, you're going to go electric. So, I should set up electriccarsareslow.com, and I'll take up the fight. This is inspiration. This is great. We need science fighters. This is awesome. I feel like Mythbusters and Monster Garage has really influenced people, the science people, to step up and like get a little schoolyard with people. Like, let's go. Let's talk about this for real. It's great. So Travis, you're on a roll. Keep going, man. This is awesome. Let's go back. Let's go to the next person here. See how. Oh my God!
You pick one. I love all these people. I'd be happy to talk about any of them.
Okay.
You want to stay on the top row?
Let's leave Steve for last, because I know a little bit about him because he's been on the show and he's very supportive of the show. This Shop Class podcast. He wants all of us to get connected. It's great. Let's go to the man with the beard.
The bearded weirdo, Ben Bogey himself.
All right.
Ben Bogey is a third-generation builder. He's currently operating out of Connecticut. He is a leader in our industry in terms of data collection and research, but he's a hands-on guy. Like, he doesn't wear the bags too much of late. He's more brains and less brawn. But I worked with him at IBS, and that guy can still swing a hammer.
Say Ben?
He's Ben Bogey. BenBogie. That's him, Ben Bogey.
Right.
Yeah,
Cool.
Ben is fantastic. He just hosted the Performance Zone at IBS and was kind enough to ask myself and my partner Joe to come and help him a little bit, along with Walt Tamala, Randy Williams, and Mike Gurton were down there with us. Ben is the guy that if you are thinking, I might try it this way, call Ben first, because he's probably tried it that way 16 times to be sure that he liked the result. And if he didn't like the result, he tried to see if he could tweak something and make it a result he would like. He's the first person that I ever heard that wasn't Coda Bueno of Building Science Corp talk about monitoring in walls, putting in data loggers interior of his assemblies to actually know how walls were assembled, actually know the performance of a wall after it was assembled. So him and Dan Colbert up there in Maine, they were working on all sorts of home projects, and they were putting monitors in people's walls and roofs to determine basically when moisture was loading, if there was a vapor issue, what the temperature was at different times of the day, so that you could determine if they were getting adequate drying. He's a longtime proponent of the double stud wall assembly. Ben is a real devoted sustainability guy. He's a father. He's my co-host on the BS and Beer show. We do a weekly show with Emily and Mike Maines and Ben Bogey, and he is just a building science guy and teacher who really cares about our industry. So he's a fantastic person. I don't know if he's doing a ton of content. He kind of stepped it up, and then he kind of got busy with his new job. But he has been at JLC, and I think he will be at JLC Live, and has been teaching at IBS and other organizations for a long time.
And I'm going to JLC.
Go and meet Ben. He's super nice and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm going.
JLC is amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. It'll be my first time. I can't wait. I'm coming from a different world, but I really appreciate. Look, it's not my fault. Mark's got me all excited about the thermal break. It's my favorite concept in the world. I love that, and I love the red door of truth. So because the same thing applies to all the car stuff as well. And it's just like, to me, it's like, wow, you're doing this with like the envelope of where someone lives. It's incredible to me that you're worried about the performance. And Travis, you don't even need to say any more about Ben. Once you told me that he put data loggers in the wall, that's it. This guy is OG gangster science guy. I mean, that's amazing. I would love to think about the data loggers on all the performance cars. When you're serious about success, you want to know tire temperature, you want to know tire pressure, you want to know all these things so that you can make your adjustments and get some data. Very cool.
Yeah, Ben's outstanding. Definitely look him up at JLC. If you get a chance to catch him teaching, he will definitely tell you something you didn't know, or maybe lots of things that you didn't know. I can keep going, but I feel like this is way too much of me talking. I feel like, Connor, you did Emily's podcast. You know Emily pretty well. I mean, she's a good friend of mine, but I would love for you to talk about Emily Mottram, if you would like to do that. I don't want to boss anyone around.
Yeah, no, I think so. My relationship with these people is almost more of a fanboy, because I do so deeply respect what they do for their clients, professionally in the industry. I'll just say one thing about Ben before we talk about Emily is, before I knew Ben very well, it's sort of emblematic of, I think, everyone right now in the building trades. If you reach out to someone for help, they're going to give you a response, and a thoughtful response, without question. I asked Ben to join one of our classes a year and a half ago. We were virtual. I used to look for guest speakers only in my area who could drive an hour and a half to the college, pay $10 for parking, meet them outside, bring them upstairs, connect to a PowerPoint, take half their day for 40 minutes. The fact that you could have Ben join a class last year to talk about data loggers, and it starts to just spark a connection with people in the class who are not so physical. They like the idea of building science, but don't want to frame for a whole winter to get hired on. So to learn that you can learn about technology and build little Raspberry Pis and sensors and track these things and sort of business. So we had one student who wants to do this for builders, sell a tracking service, build these things. And like that for me is super exciting. So Ben's emblematic of that. Emily, my experience with Emily is I met Emily through a podcast I was listening to, and I started just firing off questions in the chat as I normally do. And Emily was hitting all of them down with just very thoughtful insights, wanted to share, wanted to connect, learn about our school. So Emily is a practicing architect on the east side of the United States. And the great thing for us being in Ontario is even though we are Ontario in Canada and Emily's on the East Coast, it's the same climate zone. So the things that we learn about and the way Emily builds, it's the same wall systems. It's the same challenges with environment. So Emily's been incredibly supportive and how to be on her podcast to talk about education and education in trades. Emily also teaches at the local, I think it's, which university is it? It's at her alma mater for architecture where she teaches. Do you know what that is, Travis?
Well, she went to Penn State, but I don't know if she is teaching at Penn State. I think she's teaching somewhere closer. Am I wrong about that?
No, you might be right about that. You might be right about that. Yeah, I mean, Emily is just a wonderful person. So to have that perspective on the panel. So go ahead, Travis.
I was just going to say I was going to direct you to her Instagram, which is Mottram ARCH, and it's MOTTRAM ARCH, Mottram Arc. And yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
No problem. Got it. Very cool.
And the E3 podcast is her podcast. If you want to go on iTunes and pick up the E3 podcast, it's about empowering women, entrepreneurship, energy. She was an energy raider for a while, but Emily, she's a fantastic person, and you will learn a lot from her if you follow.
Oh, cool.
100%.
And she's talking about the wall assembly. Nice.
Everybody's talking about wall assembly. Come on, man, it's the hot ticket. Everybody wants in.
This is it right here. Cool. So that's awesome that she's on there. Very cool. Okay, let's see. What is this here? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, Emily's an author. She just finished writing a book with our other colleague, Mike Maines, and also Dan Wilbert, who I mentioned as being Ben Bogey's former employer and good friend. They wrote a book called The Pretty Good House, which is a concept read the book. Go buy the book. It's a great book to teach you about the concept. Even though I haven't gotten to read it yet, I know the concept. And it's essentially, passive house is a brilliant way to solve our energy problems and is an extremely high mark in building. One of the best assemblies you could put together could result in a passive house if you dedicate yourself to it. But there are times where people get mired in a system of scoring, and that can get complicated and trip some people up. So what Pretty Good House does is it says, yeah, instead of worrying about having, R20 below the slab and R40 in the basement and R60 in the walls and R80 in the roof, or I think I got the numbers wrong there. Someone will correct me. Just spend money until it stops making sense on your envelope. So build a small house, build a house that has minimal environmental load, and do the best that you can instead of focusing on hitting this number here or worrying about the thermal analysis for that fastener there. And I don't think these programs are in opposition at all. I think that they complement one another. And I think that you can aspire to build a passive house. I hope to build one. I never have, but I hope to get the opportunity to build one. Pretty Good House is an attainable goal. We're building them right now. And it's an easier sell to a client who isn't as interested in that super high performance, which does have a cost. So Pretty Good House is a fantastic concept. And look for that book in your local bookstores because it's going to help you understand building better.
Nice. It's a pre-order. I don't think it's out yet.
That's correct. Pre-order now, June 28th. Come and get it.
Okay, cool. I'll get my copy. That's awesome.
And small fact to it, if you look at some of the assemblies that perform the best in terms of judging in the competition, because we look at both buildability and cost and performance, pretty good house assemblies are the ones that really dominate here because of, passive, as Travis said, there is an upfront capital cost to build an assembly that has a performance target, to model it in a way that reaches those targets, to do the energy modeling and the thermal bridge analysis. So for some people, including my family's building business, that feels like a building type that they can't do because it's not in their wheelhouse. Pretty good house is this beautiful stepping stone to get you. It's almost just the highest elevation of your current building standards. You can use Rockwell, you can use your standard vapor control layers, standard WRBs. It's how you detail and how you build things available at the hardware store or your local building yard, and building the best wall possible. So for those of you teaching, if passive feels a bit too specialized, Pretty Good House is a complete system to talk to students about, and one that's maybe a bit more approachable until they want to go passive.
Can I just ask not everybody can build from scratch. So some of these houses, I think in this particular situation, this is a retrofit. Am I right?
That's right.
And so is this on the outside, this air barrier, 1 inch gap? This is on the outside, right?
Correct. Yeah, you got it.
So now you got a situation where I always, naive, more insulation, but not on the inside. And maybe an air barrier too, which gives you your, vapor and your thermal break. And so you could add stuff to the outside, which then would bring up your, your efficiency of your envelope. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think the thing to kind of put your head around is continuity in that word specifically. So if you were to take, let's say it's this building here, it's a masonry building. Toronto's full of them. We have double brick walls. These are homes where the existing interior finish is plaster. The plaster is attached to wood straps. That's attached to strapping against the wall. So what you have is 10 inches of masonry, half-inch gap, wood strapping, lath, and then plaster. So if you want to insulate that house conventionally, you'd remove all the plaster, remove all the strapping, frame a 2x4 wall inside of that masonry, insulate with Rockwell, put a vapor control layer against the studs, probably like poly, until you learn it's a bad word. Use poly, and then you drywall it. Okay, so you have like R14, but look at the continuity. If you look at an average wall, 27% of that wall is made of wood. So 27% of it is not insulated to the degree of your insulation. So not really continuous. If instead you said, well, let's maintain the plaster layers, let's look to the outside, we're going to laminate the outside of the building with outsolation. We're going to outsolate the building with a continuous layer.
Oh, outsolation.
Yeah, outsolation. It helps the mind understand it. So then if we even use 2 inches there, I bet you if you model it, 2 inches that's continuous is likely better modeled than 3.5 that's not continuous on the inside of your envelope. So that's the one part where retrofits can make a lot of sense. The second one is air barriers and air tightness.
Wait, Connor, when you say continuous, this is a layman right here, and sometimes I do this because I might not be the only one thinking about these layman's things. When you say continuous, not continuous in the cross section, continuous on the out this way.
Yeah, like I mean, if you went to a donut shop and took a donut and dipped it in a candy coating, you want every surface of the donut to be covered, right? Any breaks or cracks, effectively, we look at it as air leakage. So like I like to think about continuity of air barriers. If we all think our houses are not that leaky, they are. If you flip it and say, what if my house is a submarine? If I dip my house in water, where will it start leaking water? And you'll make a list of 100 things. Well, all those things leak air. So once you get around that, we think about continuity. So if you think about engines, you probably pressure test parts of the engine, I imagine, before you start things up. You might pressure test the exhaust system to make sure it doesn't have leaks. The same thing is here, is from when you produce exhaust or air, can it exit the end of the muffler with no leaks? You have systems for that, and we have systems for that too. Go ahead, Travis.
This is so.
I want to jump in because we're riding the car analogy here. I got to get the car analogy because this is so perfect. This is the crossover. So as we're talking about adding insulation and then creating risk by changing the assembly, the house works as a system. That's why it's a wall assembly. It's a whole assembly. You have to consider all of these components. Thing that I think you're going to like is the comparison for the wall assembly to be just like a car. Specifically, my 76 Jeep CJ7. I have the straight six, the 258, the torque machine engine in that Jeep. And it's great. And they use that engine for a really long time. And then somebody at the factory said, let's make this axle. Instead of that Dana 44, let's use the AMC 20. And they still had all the torque that straight six 258 was making. But then they designed a ring and gear set that couldn't handle that torque. And so everyone who took the ultimate off-road machine, off-roading, came back with a cardboard box with ring and pinion in it and threw it in the dumpster and went and got a Dana 44 so that they could go back wheeling again. Because if you change the properties of one component of the system, you have effectively you've changed the performance of other components. So if you go ahead and add that outsulation, you have now supercharged the performance of your wall's thermal resistance in a way that is so much more valuable than, as Connor said, adding 3.5 inches of insulation in the cavity, way less useful because you break it every 16 inches with a stud. So that was the analogy I wanted to get because I thought you would appreciate it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's funny because what I say about that is you're only as strong as your weakest link. But in this case, you have a strong stud, and that is the strong link is actually what continuity conducts the thermal. And you actually need a break, which is amazing to me. I love this stuff. I'm actually getting super excited about building science. And I got to be honest, before you guys were on the show, and we had all those build science people and watching Matt build a house with high school students, I was like, okay, house, it's cool. I was into Frank Gehry because it's like a morphed up car, it's kind of cool.
Yep.
I never thought about the insulation that much. I mean, I knew you needed it, but I didn't know, God, on the outside, that's amazing. So outsulation. All right. Very cool.
I think the thing you're talking about, which is really exciting for a lot of people getting into this industry now, is now building well or being a good builder is measurable. So if you asked my dad 20 years ago, are you a good builder? And it's, well, I'm profitable. No one calls me back with issues and I win awards. So arguably we're doing pretty well, right? So it's very much, it's your decision based on feedback, or it's how you feel about your own work. An architect, you can't measure the beauty of their work, but you can through awards and probably the client pays you. But let's say it's not really quantifiable. If you like the scientific approach, building science gives you a way into building. We can measure air tightness. We can measure thermal performance. We can measure thermal efficiency and thermal breaks. We can do 3D modeling and add technology to it. And that, for a lot of people, is really exciting if you're not wanting to go frame on a site when it's minus 22 and build things, right? So I think that's really quite cool.
We're going to move on to this is awesome, by the way. And also, Mark put in a comment here. He said cars are MPG and buildings are air changes per hour. I like, Connor, what you said about measurable. And so I just take a second to tell people that, when it comes to, let's say, the word engineering, and, you guys are calling it building science, but it's kind of like engineering in a way. But what is engineering? And a lot of people have all kinds of definitions. But the only definition that I could think of that makes sense to me is a measurable benefit. In other words, you got to get a baseline, and then you got to come up with a way that you're going to make the difference, and you got to do it in a measurable benefit. So it's like, hey, it costs the same, but it's this much better, and I can measure it, and I know the bottom, and I know what happened here. And a measurable benefit to me is engineering, whether you use math or physics or whatever. And that's right. And Mark just put in, that's where the red door of truth comes in, which, if people don't know, they're listening, it's a pressurized system or a vacuum system so that you can check your air leaks in the house. So Connor, I appreciate you saying that it's measurable now. I fully appreciate that. Excellent. So before we get to the next judge profile, maybe we should go around and because we got a bunch of shop teachers in here. We got Duke, he's in here. He teaches middle school, and we got Nick teaching high school. Actually, I think and Bloomquist is he on-site building and whatnot. So maybe go around. Duke, do you ever deal with any of this stuff with the high school kid? With the middle school kids? Is there any way to do like insulation or exhalation or anything like that? He's unmuting himself right now. There he goes. He might be muted for some reason. You with us, Duke? Oh, okay. All right, no problem. He's got bad connection. All right. Nick, do you ever handle any of this stuff and get kids turned on about building science?
In years past, we've had a carpentry class, and we had the local VOTEC Center have a class at our school, and then their administration didn't deem it necessary, so they got rid of it. But we were a smaller program, so we would only, we would do all the traditional stuff, assembly wise and all that, and build sheds for the around the campus type of thing, so that we get all that. But this was all before zip and all that, newer stuff. So it would definitely be nice to get that program back up and running and be able to show them all this stuff.
Nice. And you've got a whole in your area, Nick, you got a whole bunch of like classic barns and whatnot. And be interesting, I'm sure they leak like crazy. So some of these systems probably be very helpful as a retrofit type of thing, right?
And when we did have it here recently with the VOTEC, the guy they had teaching it was award winning for his, energy efficiencies on his houses that he was building. So it was like, come on, like he's pumping up the pace for the local contractors and everything, but I don't know. So.
It's very hard to advocate for these programs, and that's part of the reason we got the Shop Class podcast. So if people are listening to this and you're a shop teacher, jump on here and share the wealth of knowledge, and we're stronger together. Peter's not a shop teacher right now, but he's kind of like multifaceted dude, and you're into the energy efficient houses. Did you ever come across the younger kids, get them excited about building science?
No, not so much. That's a hard go, actually. But showing them how it is and doing with the mock-ups and doing, if you go to passive house scale, then it is the red door. And as you say, measurable, comparative, and the monitoring thing, you can show results. That helps. But it is getting widespread. Connor, you're doing marvelous work down at George Brown. I like that. I'm up in Oshawa, so I'm around Toronto. But,
oh, wonderful. That's great.
Yeah. And I like that. And, come on. Ingwe won the thing. Come on. He's got an advantage. His dad. So that was good. Yeah. But, Travis, I mean, hey, you're a bit early for being on screen, aren't you? Yeah, aren't you doing 2 weeks or so? Once a month. That's all you get now. I used to like your once a week. Come on, you.
Sorry, man. We're taking that Franklin barbecue model where you give people a little less and a little less so that you can kind of try to increase demand. Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
And it does. It really does. So I wait up for that and look for you when you're on, because it's a good discussion. And you always have great topics, and the banter's terrific. Good presentations.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. I recognize your name immediately. I was like, I know him from the comments,
Yes.
from the chat. I can't follow the chat when I'm on, but when I'm not presenting or hosting, I can watch that a little closer.
Yep.
And I remember your name. So it's nice to virtually meet you.
Yes, thank you. And connected, LinkedIn, good. And yeah, because you put out the call, so I'm there with that. I follow your work, and I like what you do. And yeah, building the way you do, and you teaching your clients and teaching people what they need to look for and what to expect and why things are done better. What you present than traditional 40, like you're saying, Connor, like your dad's pretty good builder, but that traditional method of building a good house didn't involve anything close to air tightness, very leaky, but that's what was commonly thought of as a good enough house. So yeah, I've been at this now since the podcast or the accelerator started, and it was your BS and beer show that interested me first, and then I branched off and I actually got my CPHT, my certified passive house tradesperson. So yeah, that I have that. Now all I need to do is get some work in the field. I want to be employed in passive house, or with a better builder. I was roofing 30 years ago, and my job was the sheet metal counter flashing. And a friend of, Matt Lundquist knows Mark. Bob Kelly is the guy in Chicago who does the work I appreciate. He and I think alike, and yeah, he's doing it and I'm not. But it's good work. Rehabilitating buildings where the moisture at the joints and the joists and up the parapet walls. Parapet. Sorry about that, Ron. That they got to breathe. They got to let the moisture out and not keep it captured. But you have to do that with a vent method near the top of the brick wall. So he does that work, and he replaces a lot of rafters and a lot of like flooring that's falling apart because it's too moist in there. So it's getting the word out. It has to go on the popular television programs, though. How can we get this knowledge of building houses better to be attractive on the common popular TV shows, all the Reno shows that are there? Some of them, they like the pretty. And
that's tough sell.
Yeah, because they like the demolition and they like to make it look pretty. But what goes into it to get it there, not so glamorous. So
I have a different take about the popular TV shows. I think that time has passed. I think the internet's here. We're making, look, all of us here tonight are participating in this instead of sitting on the couch and watching the latest rerun of Seinfeld or whatever. So it's like, I think that's done. I think it's our time now. They led the way with the television, but the internet's here now. So that's why they call it YouTube. It's not they tube. So I think we got this. Don't give television a chance. They're done. We got this now. We got Instagram. We got and now we got the Hammer app. We got our own app that supports trades. It's unbelievable what's going on. I think we got the momentum now.
It's a much better place to learn from. Who else knows about the Essential Craftsman, the Essential Carpenter? But yeah, good. You out of Oregon, and yeah, I like what he puts out, and he's been a builder for 45 years, and he acknowledges how to do it better, and it's just that's the way to go. His YouTube channel is great, but you have to have first the need to know that it has to be better to get interested in how to do it better. So that's the thing that to make that popular and make that a demand on the building trades, on the architects, the designers. They have to know that people want to have it better, and not for too much more cost. It doesn't have to be more costly. It just has to be intentional and designed and taken that way. And those suggestions are great. That board is fantastic. That's great, Connor.
So this is all the reason to have a competition-based peer judged, reviewed. This is it right here. This gains excitement. We're talking about it. It's going to be all over the internet. I'm going to put this on Shop Class Podcast YouTube, and we're going to put it on Spotify as well. I'm catching up on the Spotify. It doesn't happen right away, but because of this, I got to move it faster. So jumping back, that was good. Thanks, Peter. Jumping back over here, which judge profile are we doing next? I think we did all the topics for Steve.
Yeah, we got Steve on the top to do. We got Mike Girton there on your bottom left in the blue shirt. Mike Girton, again, at Mike Girton on Instagram. Also, anything that you want to read from the Taunton Press for the last 25 years. Mike Girton and Rick Arnold used to present at JLC, and Mike still presents at JLC, presents at IBS. He's very active in local code education in Rhode Island. He's written extensively, specifically on deck construction. I think I have 3 or 4 of his books on my shelf. Mike is just an incredible wealth of knowledge about every aspect of building. And if you follow his Instagram, what you'll find is Mike does everything. So he has several rental properties he's acquired over the years that he maintains. So you might see him, replacing some cedar sidewall shingles, and he'll do it in an artful way, integrating beautiful design work, sometimes, a nature scene or wildlife. He'll also go ahead and just perfectly execute a flashing detail and show you how to do that, or tell you how to keep your deck railing from being wobbly. But he also might just be going down inside of a 40-foot deep well to replace the pump on his rental so that you can keep it going. So you get everything with Mike, and he's just incredibly generous. Well, that's across the board on the judges, but Mike's the kind of guy that if you're in the field, as I was a couple weeks ago, and you're like, oh my gosh, you guys botched the door opening. I don't have space. I'm going to have to reframe this whole wall because we don't have room for jacks, and I can't easily get header hangers in to resolve this. You can call Mike or DM him on Instagram and be like, hey, remember that box header article that you wrote a few months back? Can you tell me what the nailing pattern was in order to achieve that so that I don't have to rip my wall out? Because Mike knows everything. And he's just an absolute monk of building science in terms of the depth of his knowledge and the calm with which he shares it. It's a beautiful thing. If you get the chance to take a class from Mike at JLC, please take the time to do that. You will definitely learn something. He will answer any question you have and help you in any way that he can. He's an incredibly generous man.
I just want to add there, Travis, if you're like me, you can't cross the border at the moment and get to GLC. He did a great series last year with Copeland, Copeland, one of our sponsors from last year. So excellent, beyond excellent online platform, well-produced videos for skilled tradespeople. And he did a video on deck construction. Wonderful series. I think a lot of young tradespeople learn about their first business or building, maybe through building decks and sheds. And Mike is a guru with decks, connections and ledger boards and anchors. And it's a deep dive into decks and framing. And it's a wonderful series. Him and Jordan Smith teach that.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, send me the link to that. I'll put it up.
Yeah, Copeland is really affordable videos too for educators and students. I mean, these are imagine masterclass. We talked about Franklin Barbecue. Have you seen the Franklin Barbecue series where he's holding 2 pieces of wood trying to tell you the moisture content for 10 minutes? It's that level of art direction, but for skilled trades. It's just, oh man, you just want to start to wire a house looking at this stuff. It's great. Yeah, I'll drop in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, I think I found it. I think we talked about this once before. Oh, yeah, it's a masterclass for all the building trades. Yeah, this is cool. Oh, take a look at this. Right.
So there's classes on basic tools, carpentry tools, construction math, plan reading, commercial project management, millwork, interior trim, decks. They seem to add videos and new courses all the time. They are courses. It's very interactive video content, really well produced, tight stories. There's workbooks and exercises for you to do as well. They have courses on estimating, plan takeoffs, and they're very affordable courses for what they offer.
Cool. Yeah, I remember looking at this. I forget which episode we had a guest that talked about it. Here we go. And he's on there. He's an instructor. Great. That is cool. Freestanding
I think
deck.
our last judge on, sorry,
No, go ahead. Let's go back to the judges.
I was going to say our last judge on the bottom line there is, he's an adequate builder out of Columbia, Missouri. That's my good friend Jake Bruton, and he once introduced me on Mark Willie's show with Dave Cooper as an adequate friend. So that's where all the adequate jokes come from. Jake has an excellent sense of humor and is also a second generation builder here in the Midwest. He also shares generously, not just about building, but also building science. And I probably learned as much about air sealing from Jake or from Steve as I did from Jake. They're a dynamic duo. They work together on a lot of projects. I mean, Steve's all over the U.S., but I think at least half of Jake's projects are with Steve. They work together on the Unbuild It podcast. Jake is he's actually expanding to my market. He's hired my good buddy Isaac, and they're going to start building in Kansas City. And we're really excited to have him here because it's just going to raise the bar of building throughout the Midwest. And that's what we're all about with the Midwest Building Science Symposium, the BS and Beer, the wall assembly competition. We're thrilled to have that. So if you guys want to check out Jake on the Unbuild It podcast or on the Build Show Network, that's a great place to find him and learn from him. He also does a really good job of talking to builders about business, which is something that I think a lot of builders stumble into. They don't, if you're like me, you love being on the tools and you feel like you're really good when you're on them. And then all of a sudden you have to navigate a contract or figure out how to make a profit or, figure out your legal, your insurance. And and Jake does a really nice job of sharing that stuff very transparently, past struggles. He's very, very generous with his time as well. So if you get the chance, check out Jake on the Build Show Network. Definitely listen to the Unbuild It podcast. Comes out every other Thursday. And can't go wrong with that guy.
Yeah, I've listened to the Unbuild It podcast. I kind of like it. It's you guys, they sit around and they kind of give each other, they kind of like give each other a couple of jabs, but they tackle topics. It's kind of cool. Some weird ones too, like obscure stuff like, what do you do about a foundation, a wood foundation? Does that have merit? Let's talk about it. And I was like, you're going to talk about wood foundations? All right, this is interesting. I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a possibility. And it's amazing. So, pretty cool. This stuff is awesome. Oh my God. I got a leg cramp here. This is terrible. Sitting too long. Anyway, so let's get to the final architect here. Or judge.
That's Steven Basic Architect.
All right.
Steven Basic Architect on Instagram.
Nice.
Got to hit him up.
Yeah.
You want to take that one, Connor? Everybody knows Steve.
He's awesome. He's so amazing. Go ahead, Connor.
Steve is a powerhouse. I mean, I learned about Steve quite late actually. It's on Instagram, I think 3-4 years ago, and he was posting just the most intimate details of walls and the way that he talked about how they performed, why they didn't work, and would just rip them to shreds. I love the honesty and the depth. And when I learned about his pedigree and where he had been writing from and researching and building and his background and how much passive he's been building around the United States, and just his willingness to share different systems they've been trying homes without, basements without concrete slab, a slabless slab using 2 layers of OSB screwed together as a way to reduce concrete load. All this stuff is just incredibly exciting. Steve he's on the Build Show with Matt Reisinger, is on the podcast Unbuild It, is famous for redlining drawings, something we're all familiar with in the architectural world, but just ripping drawings a new one, but showing you why and breaking it down using very accessible language. For anyone, Steve is worth listening to and being berated by. That'd be a pleasure, I think. He's just an absolute genius. And funny enough, as a side anecdote, when I started learning about how much he knew, again, I reached out to people. I was taught something a long time ago, which is if you never ask the question, the answer is always no. So I started reaching out to people that I admired and saying, would you come and do a guest crit at our school? And Steve, within the first mentions of our response, said, yes, as long as the school will pay for my flight, I'll come out there. And that was just incredible. And then the lockdown happened, and he's been able to help us virtually. But the fact that someone would do that for the industry as well, incredibly busy, incredibly insightful, just a powerhouse.
It's great. Here's all the redlining of the, not redlining, but the red marking of the drawings. This is cool. And he's got a great story. Talking to him, it was very similar when we had Jimmy DeResta on the podcast one time, and he just kind of got into almost like a campfire story and telling stories about the old times and whatnot. And same with Steve. He just gets going about a story about his past. He's got interesting military background, and it's incredible. So he's it's great being around him. I think he's. I haven't met him personally, but it's great being a part of his leadership. It's awesome. And I don't even build houses, and I feel a part of it. It's amazing. It definitely, he transcends the top. He's more than just building science. It's unbelievable.
I think he speaks to people that are passionate about what they do. Their passion is really infectious, and when they talk about their conviction.
Speaking of Steve, he is entering the room as we speak. I am not kidding.
Hey, Mark.
That is hilarious. Steve, are you joining us? We are. We were just talking about you.
If Steve's coming, I got to take back all that good stuff I said about him. I wouldn't do that if he was going to be here. That's unacceptable.
I was just going to do that joke.
You gotta hurry up and erase the chat, Travis. You don't want him to see what we were writing.
This is funny. Very cool. So I guess he's getting situated here. Cool. So if you're just joining, we were just talking about the Sweet 16 coming up.
Look at this guy. Nice hat and shades.
Steve, how you doing?
Always doing good, buddy.
We have to take back all the things we said. We were just talking about you. Did you hear it coming through the airwaves? Is that what happened?
I heard you. I'll see y'all. When Travis starts talking bad about me, I hear about it.
This is almost like the WWF, like somebody had to come out of retirement. He's like, all right, look, I'll handle it. I'll put the suit back on.
I hear them all talking crap. Time to come out. Set them straight. And Bloomquist, you're no angel.
This is great. Well, so we were just talking about that, you were part of the judgment for the or guidance for the Sweet 16 wall assembly competition coming up.
I'll be there, judging heartily. I'll actually judge, not like some of the judges.
Yeah, this is Mark is the WWF advocate of the group here. We got to get some Randy Savage talking here, and Bloomquist. What do you got, man?
Go for it, Mark.
I'm just loving it. Sorry, I was kind of had to listen while I was up with the kids and stuff. So yeah, this has been great. I was catching up on the feed, and yeah, perfect time with Steve coming in, of course.
Nice. So,
Bloomquist, you guys are doing good things down there, man.
Yeah,
Looking
thank you,
good.
man. We're we started putting windows in today. So I told Travis and I, if anybody's watching an Instagram post, we just happen to be hunting down air leaks the same time frame, so we were messaging back and forth scores and stuff. Now Travis has a lot more deliberate penetrations in their house than we did. We were still pretty much a green box, but we put up that red door of truth.
What do you got? Stretch tape on
And
ration?
sent the kids hunting. Oh, say that again, Steve.
I said you got stretch tape on ration?
You only doing the corners like Tim Euler?
Yeah. Yep.
Get Huber to freaking send you a couple
we
rolls.
did the corners, and then and I'll post about what we did for those and stuff with the T studs and stuff. We put a little slope on there and stuff, but yeah, the stretch tape just hit perfect, and the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, look at this! The stretch symbol is perfect." I'm like, "Well done, Huber." Well done.
How many takes to get stretch tape formatted like that on the corner? And don't lie.
That was random. The thing is, it's happened to
Yeah,
us on
random,
the house. It happened to us
random.
twice.
You couldn't have placed that any better. Random your
Random.
ass. You couldn't place that any better.
What
For the gram, right?
I know you guys are doing a good job, but let's not push it. Y'all ain't walking on water out there, for God's sake.
why do you
For
have
another
to
go social award. Go ahead, Ron.
Oh,
why do you have to have stretch tape in the corner?
it's really hard to do it with flat tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
You
have to
don't.
call
It's
these
just a pain in the ass not
butterflies.
having it.
Do some
Oh, because it's a
origami.
compound curve. It's like sheet metal. You can't make two turns. Right. Yeah, you can't bend it this way and that way. That would be a stretch. And in car stuff, we also do shrinking. So you could stretch and shrink the metal. They, like in old school, they used to do the English wheel. And so that's interesting. I always relate it back to the car so I can understand what I'm looking at here. But you're right. You can't do the corner without pulling it. That's pretty cool. And you can kind of see through it. It's a little translucent right there. That's cool.
Oh yeah, when you stretch it, material.
Yeah.
You only have so much material there. You make it bigger, it gets thinner.
Yeah. And I see you got the red door of truth right here. This looks like a horror scene. What, Matt?
The red door of proof.
This is like
What'd you guys say?
Well,
it was
so
0.41 without windows.
yeah, point. Let's see. Go to the next post that has.
I remember those days. 0.4, 0.5. Then we got good.
This one, Matt.
We're working on it. It's only the second house, right?
Now, you guys are killing it, man. There's builders out there have been doing this for 20 years, can't get under 2.
And what
That's amazing, Matt.
What numbers are we looking at here? The 0.4, that
Thanks.
is what is
the kid
that?
did a good job.
That's ACH 58 at 50
So that's
Pascal.
the air.
That's
So that means the
air-
house dumps out all of the interior volume of air less than half, well, let's see, 0.4 times in an hour if there was a 20-mile-an-hour wind on every exterior surface of the house, over the roof, every side, underneath the bottom. That's what ACH 50 is. It's just an approximation standard that everybody adheres to so that we can measure things against one another. But that number is a really, really good number. Passive house is 0.6. Those are Steve Basic, Jake Bruton numbers right there. That's a really good number, Matt. Congrats.
Wait, a passive house is 0.6, and Matt's house with high school students is a 0.41? Really?
0.4, yeah.
So Matt, I just toured a custom infill
Now-
house. I toured a custom infill house last week. This is a Toronto infill, a $5 million build, very influential family, top firm in the city. They spent a lot of money engineering on the envelope. They foamed the entire interior. They blue skin VP the whole outside of it. They talked a lot about detailing, and they blew a 1-1. This is one of the best firms in the city building what they thought was high performance, and you beat that incredibly. That's an incredible number. You should be really proud of that. The students should be proud of that. That's amazing.
Did you say 1.1? Is it 1.1? Is that what they?
Yeah, well,
1.1.
Yeah, so we started off with
So
1.1 and knew we were going to have
with
leaks, but I wanted to be able.
Go ahead. Connor, go ahead.
Oh,
No, Matt, go ahead.
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Sorry, and my internet's being
Matt,
glitchy,
it's
so
your
if I
turn.
come in, I may be in half a second.
No, you're
late.
good, Matt. You're up.
Yeah. Now we do have to put our we just started putting our windows and stuff in, but we started off at 1.1, and I knew we had air leaks, especially around like our hatch door for our crawl space, and I knew we were gonna have some other air leaks. But I wanted the kids to be able to find air leaks. The last time we did this with Jake, we hit like the 0.58 or whatever, and Travis was there. There wasn't a lot of stuff to go find. We found a couple things, but I wanted the kids to be able to find that and teach that. And a couple of them really got into it, going around with big stretch caulking and the thermal imaging gun and sealing them up. And they watched that dial drop. So they dropped that 0.11 down to about a 0.8. And then I taped around the crawl space hatch door because we haven't got it sealed properly. But we pretty much use Steve's sealing detail like he does with an attic hatch, with the foam gasket and everything. Worked out really well in the last one too. And doing that and then hitting a couple other spots. We had a little bit of air leakage underneath one of the exterior doors. And then that thing. Oh, and the other thing too, at the time we don't have the electric temporary heat. We still have the propane heat. We were running the blower, the salamander. That air blowing was affecting the rating. So we turned that off. And then that thing dropped down to the 0.4. And what was cool about it is all of a sudden the screen went blank because you won't register. So on one of the pictures, it shows that there's only one of the pucks out on that door. And because we had to plug, we were doing it with two, and then we had to plug one, and then it was having a hard time reading it. And I covered half. I showed the kids, I said, watch what happens when I cover half this hole. And then it would ramp up. Like our door was almost having a hard time depressurizing any more of the house.
Is this a puck right here? This down here?
Yeah, that's what I'm calling
Yeah.
it.
Good. Interesting. So this is what Connor was talking about, is that nowadays you can measure this stuff, and this is like a measurable benefit. We were talking about engineering and how it's really just a kind of like a measurable, you start with a baseline, try and make an improvement. And that's great that you can watch it in real time and make these changes. That's just amazing.
And really, that
over
was the
here-
really cool feature.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I'm second behind you guys.
Do it.
That was the cool teaching moment, Ron, was the fact that they could do something and then that meter changed and they could see the result of their action. And that was really cool, being able to finally do that with the kids, and they could actually see air sealing now, right? You run the caulk, you run the tape, but you don't see its effect until you do something and something changes. So this was like the perfect teaching moment scenario. It was great.
Wow. That's awesome. And I love this thermal camera. I see a T-stud in there. That's pretty cool.
No scale though.
Scale? What'd you say?
Colors don't mean much without a scale.
Oh, okay. So you need like a baseline or a scale on
Yeah.
the side of it?
Well,
Okay.
like the numbers and
enough.
stuff.
Pretty
I was
pictures.
just having a little bit of fun. It wasn't very scientific.
Matt, you're in big trouble. That's it. Cool. This is great. So now let's give Connor and Travis a chance to lead us into the new challenge. I mean, basically, we've been talking about the structure of the contest in last year, and then we've been talking about the judge profiles, and then we were lucky enough to be joined by Steve as we were finishing talking about it. And now let's go back and Connor, you want to give us kind of give us a rundown of what's going to happen this year and how people can participate.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So this year, this is the third running of the contest. It's the second year as a focus on students. So first and foremost, it's open to any building trade, skilled trade architectural or design student at a high school level, college, or university, anywhere in Canada or the US, it's completely free to enter. So that's the whole thing that's underlined. So we want anyone. If you're in skilled trades, you're in a carpentry program, you're taking a high school course, learning about assemblies, you're following the Unbuild It podcast, you're watching the Build Show, you're listening to BSM Beer, you just like that there's technology now as part of envelopes, and you learn some basics of drawing and SketchUp, put your ideas together. You worked with a builder last summer and thought they had a great wall that you built, draw it up and get some feedback. So anyone can enter this competition. The judges are judging it on sort of 6 criteria that we're working on the weighting of it this year to rebalance some of the categories. But your wall, it is an assembly. It's assembly of materials to create a part of the house, and we evaluate it like an assembly. It has evaluated on cost, performance, buildability. Maybe you have this absolute rock star for performance, but it's very hard to build on site, where you crane in partitions and maybe not that scalable. We talked about durability as well. How durable is that wall? How well can it shed water, and how integral are the control layers? How continuous are your details? All of this is considered in that voting. So what we're looking at really is we've got 45 days for any student across North America to submit an entry. You simply submit a drawing or a SketchUp model. You can build a physical model on a balsam wood if you want to, take photos of it, submit that. There's just some very simple criteria for you to just share some ideas about your submission past just the visuals. So what was your intent? What climate zone is it for? Climate zone is really important for judges to consider when looking at your assembly. Are you up in northern Canada, where you have more heating days than maybe down south in Texas or California? So when we're looking at those assemblies, we know maybe some of the issues you're dealing with. So again, students can go on and look at last year's submissions. You can read all of the insightful feedback from judges last year, get a sense of how they critiqued just some of their ideas that they shared, and kind of better your assemblies and learn from last year's work. You can also just see examples of what last year's submissions look like, to get a sense of what you might be up for. The way that submissions will work is we're trying to get 16 submissions, and ideally we have submissions from each climate zone in North America. So the way our bracket works is we're running, the first round has 16 entries, which means we'd have 8 brackets. That really means we can have 2 from each climate zone. And ideally, that's how we can share ideas. And those get whittled down as they move through the voting and through the grading. This year, we've got an amazing support from some of our sponsors, and those include SIGA North America, Rockwool, Sashco, Alpin, Passive House Accelerator, Baxton Gui, the architectural firm out of New York, Offside Dirt, and EMU Systems. It also looks like Passive House Canada is going to come on board as well as a sponsor. So we have cash for students who we have a first prize, second prize, and third and fourth based on the bracket. There'll be cash for winners, building materials for their school to help build in their programs, and then in many cases free and discounted training with Passive House Canada to get their certified Passive House tradesperson certificates.
I just got the message that Travis has to leave in a minute, but I really appreciate, Travis, you being here. I think it was excellent. Really getting to know you guys. And I appreciate you launching this contest. I mean, I think this is going to be awesome. Maybe I'll get some of my students to participate. Definitely going to try and get K-Wit to do it at our school, and I'll help in any way I can. So Travis, thanks a lot for joining us on the Shop Class Podcast.
It was a pleasure. I really appreciate the time. And once again, really want to thank you guys for what you're doing. Guys and gals in education that are really shaping our next generation of builders. We really need it, and it's really important work. And I just can't thank you enough for the generous community that you're part of. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right, Travis. See you later. Cool. So, and then Connor, sorry, did you want to add more, or can we go to this year's judges?
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah. So what's really nice is all the judges from last year, Steve included, thankfully have agreed to come back and critique and share their insights and vote on some of the assemblies. We have a new judge joining us, Sean Saintamore out of Vancouver. So excellent builder, was working in high performance with 475 building supplies. Also was taught at a university outside in Vancouver. Excellent detailer. Just a passion and patience to talk to students about their ideas. So much about when you critique a student is different than professional. We have to remember that they might not be as confident. So Sean has a great insight to look at these students. So Sean's joining the panel, and the same six judges from last year joining us too. So Steve Basic, Christine Williamson, Jake Bruton, Mike Girton, Emily Mottram, and Ben Bogey. So it's important for us to have 7 judges, so we have an odd number for voting. And we all, as we said earlier, they represent different sort of spectrums of the client relationship or the building relationship. So we have builders who can advocate for different aspects of the building or the envelope that maybe an architect or building science specialist have my different perspectives. So really great diversity here in the panel in terms of experience, geography, climate zones, to help critique the students' work.
Nice. This is great. Well, Connor, I really appreciate you, doing the effort that it takes to put all this together. And so everybody's got about 45 days left to submit, and then it's going to go into that same Sweet 16, basketball-looking thing as before, right? And everybody can take a look at what the judges had to say. Steve, you're joining in. We were talking about the access that people gain through the comments. People were leaving like these comments, and it's amazing to look back at. We looked at the competition from before and how you can zoom in on a judge's comment, and that's just pretty amazing, that the access that has been given through this contest. So it'll be similar, right, Connor?
Yeah, we're running the same format. So a lot of this is we put in the legwork last year to build out the board and get feedback from people who both participated and judged. This format seemed to work. It's pretty visual. We use it in class for doing grits. So we'll basically copy the board, clean it off, start it fresh, and when students drag or submit their work, we'll drag them in. So everything the judges can see, all the participants can see. All the feedback they leave, anyone can read. So it's very transparent that way. Because you look at some of the insights that Steve shared last year, Christine shared last year, and Mike and Ben and Jake. These are things that should not just be gleaned by one person. They should be read by everyone in the competition. And for the following years and to come back even now, what Steve's feedback was last year and Jake's feedback last year is just as relevant as it was 12 months ago. So this kind of format for us works really well, I think. As an entrant this year, the first thing to do is go and read last year's comments, read the submissions. The fact that all the feedback is color-coded to the judge, you can see some of the perspective that they gave. So yeah, this is the format we're running. Sponsors are very similar. We're actually almost tripled the prize packages this year. So we're really getting momentum on how much to really reward the students for their effort. And we're discussing, because we've actually had more sponsorship interest than we thought, about creating a small scholarship for students to use for trade-specific training or building design-specific training. So yeah, we've got 45 days. For most colleges and universities, that was strategic to line up with the end of the semester. So students had the full rest of their semester to either get feedback from their professors or teachers, work with each other, get them past the kind of exam stage. For the colleges here, we're wrapped up by April 16th. Universities here wrapped up by about April 6th. So they have about 2 weeks after school, because life is busy. So we want to make sure they have more time this year to do that. And for high school students, that means you've got time to help mentor them before summertime. So, and as Travis said before he left here, Fine Home Building has also come on board again as a sponsor this year to help us publish and share the live judging. So we'll be having webinars shared, the dates shared soon. So those will be hosted live, so you can hear the comments and see those discussions. And then the students are all actually invited to that, as we're all just really to replicate what a room is like, to get in-person feedback. So that's all coming up soon.
Nice. This is great. All right. Well, this is cool. Maybe we could get give us a final thought. Maybe we'll get a final thought from Steve. Maybe give us the number one thing the students should take into account for when they attack this problem, or maybe the top 3, whatever you would like. And just got to unmute yourself there, Steve. Sorry. Should be on your Google. There you go.
Yeah, I'm off. I gotcha. Final words. What would I leave you with? Well, the most important thing about information is that nobody owns it. We're all curators of it. And it's not only available for us to share, I think it's our duty to share it.
Nice. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
And responsibility. Right? If you have information that everybody can benefit from, it's your duty to share it, because we're all out to win.
Yeah, we're all on the same team here. Absolutely. Well, that's great. So, all right, well, we'll end the recording there, and I think that I'll distribute this as soon as I can, and we'll promote it on the Shop Class podcast. Get a lot of teachers and students involved. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Connor. Thank you to Travis, who left earlier, and we had a lot of good people on here. We got Bloomquist. He's building a house with his students. We got Mark, Build Small, Duke, Peter, thanks for joining, Nick, and Steve, thanks for joining in. And we're going to hang out a little bit, obviously, but it's good to package up the recording so we can get it out there to people so they can catch up on this. All right.
There you go.
Shop Class
Thanks a lot.
Podcast.